This is a quick crash course in what happens in HunterXHunter after the anime ends. The manga goes to 390 chapters currently, the anime only adapts to about here, chapter 338. So there's about 50 chapters to catch up on. There's two arcs in these chapters, Dark Continent and the Succession War. Let's start with the former and build into the latter. Let's crack in. Remember this established world map? Well, it turns out it's comparably just an archipelago in a much bigger world. The greater world is the Dark Continent. A few voyages have been done through the years, each ending in disaster. Those few that did return each came back with a different threat to humanity. I, the gaseous lifeform, Pap, the beast that keeps humans as pets, Brion, the botanical weapon, Hellbell, the twin-tailed snake, and Zobe, the immortality disease. The 5 countries in charge of those successful voyages became the V5, basically a tiny UN, and got all the countries to ban travel to the Dark Continent, recognizing the hostility and threat of the New World. This is the country of Kakeen. It's had a recent political restructure which technically made them a new country, and also technically means that they're no longer bound by the travel ban. Kakeen announces to the world that they're going to go and even start colonies on the Dark Continent. They're disregarding the threats as propaganda and are looking to find glory in expansion. To lead the team, Kakeen has hired the only living survivor of a voyage to the Dark Continent, Beyond Netero, the old chairman's son. He basically makes an open invitation for anyone who wants to come to move to Kakeen now. Beyond really wants another shot at the Dark Continent. He's allied himself with Kakeen and planned things out so well as to essentially force all the major players' hands into letting him go. The V5 are understandably worried that Kakeen will bring back another calamity to humanity. There's also the worry that this voyage could actually succeed, giving Kakeen the only foothold in the new continent. The V5 aren't too keen on starting a world war over this, so they decide on a diplomatic solution. Kakeen is asked to join the V5 and become the V6. Now, Kakeen's voyage has become a global endeavor. Any bounty retrieved from the Dark Continent will be split evenly between the V6. To help, the Hunters Association is hired to protect the voyage on the V6 behalf. Essentially, their job is to ensure no threats return and that any base set up becomes neutral ground, not solely the territory of Kakeen. This is exactly what Beyond planned out. He supported Kakeen into the V6, forced the old V5 into allowing the trip, and essentially turned the trip from impossible to happening. As part of this plan, he surrendered himself to the Hunters Association. Now functionally their prisoner, the V6 are more comfortable letting him on the journey and stopped any plans to assassinate him to try and stop the voyage. Beyond has actually also organized his own team for the voyage. Of note are 2 people who left the Zodiaks to join Beyond's team, Pariston and Ging. Pariston has apparently been doing some background work behind the scenes in the Hunters Association to facilitate the whole trip. Let's move to the Zodiaks. Once Beyond is revealed, old Chairman Netero had left a last will and testament for such an occasion. Netero essentially orders them to explore the Dark Continent before his son can. With Ging and Pariston gone, they've got 2 empty spaces to fill first. Leorio quickly becomes the first new Zodiac, still having a lot of support from Hunters for punching Ging in the face. He recommends Kurapika to take the other free position. Kurapika's been off collecting the stolen eyes of his clan. There's still one collection out there that he's been unable to track down. Conveniently, the Hunters Association know who owns it, so Kurapika joins the Zodiacs to get this information. We also get some of Kurapika's backstory as well. The V5 originally hired the Association to take down Beyond, seeing him as the real driving force behind the push to the Dark Continent. After Beyond surrenders, the political situation starts to shift to letting the voyage happen, with Kakeen joining to become the V6. Now the Association is to keep Beyond under guard and to spearhead the actual groundwork in the Dark Continent. In regard to all the civilians on board who are simply colonists, the plan is to drop them off on some uninhabited islands near the ocean border, under the guise that that is the Dark Continent. Then the real explorers can split off and take the real trip. There's also a rough plan to leave Beyond there as well, but the Zodiacs can't decide if that's a good idea or not. Finally, one of the Zodiacs is actually on Team Beyond. Kurapika figures out that it's Sayu, one of the key people in charge of keeping watch of Beyond on the trip. Let's move to the Dark Continent. What do we know? It's big, really big, not only the land but the creatures as well. It's incredibly hostile. Of 7,500 official explorers, only 28 have made it back. And of those 28, only 3 were well enough to return to daily life. That's a 0.04% survival rate. It's hard to get to. It's claimed that a guide is needed to get to the Dark Continent itself. These guides are referred to as gatekeepers and are a magical beast race. It's ambiguous as to if the guides and the gatekeepers are the same, how many they are, and how advanced they are. It's also suggested that these guides may have intentionally sent the 5 threats back with the previous returning voyages, either out of spite or as a warning. Its creatures are deadly. Of the 5 voyages, each encountered a calamitous threat that ended up being brought back to the main world. The V5 try to relocate as much as they can to an underground facility, but it's mentioned that some are still out there in the world claiming lives. Also, Nanika may be an eye or an effect of eye, though as far as I'm aware that's not confirmed yet. She's affected by something of the Dark Continent, and eye is described as the codependence of desire. The codependence being the 2 personalities, or perhaps her reliance on Killua, and desire being her wish fulfillment ability. It's labeled as madness. There is a book published about the Dark Continent. It's called Journey to the New World, written 300 years ago by author Don Freaks. It suggests that the map is more like this, split between an east and a west. Don explored the eastern coastline, creating Volume 1 of the book. Ging suggests that they never found a copy of Volume 2, the west, because Don is still out there exploring. Public opinion on the book is that the whole thing is just ramblings of a madman. Let's move to the Succession War. We come to a point where the voyage is going ahead. Everyone important gets on the boat, and the trip begins. Beyond the Zodiaks, even the Phantom Troupe are here. Of note are the King of Kakeen and his 14 legitimate children, known as the Princes. The king tells the princes that the only surviving prince of this voyage will succeed him as king, which starts this whole murder game between all the princes. If you want some more details, check this video out. The important parts are that Kurapika and a few others have joined in the murder game. One of the princes happens to be the one with the last collection of scarlet eyes. Meanwhile, in the lower decks, there's a growing mafia war that Cow Guy is trying to cool down, though things are heating up with the Phantom Troupe deciding to join in. Let's finish with what the Phantom Troupe and Hisoka have been up to. Hisoka finally gets his fight with Chrollo. They set up a proper fight between them in Heaven's Arena. What follows is one of the best fights in the series, chapter 351 if you want to go have a read. It ends with Chrollo killing Hisoka, but with some sneaky nen after death, Hisoka manages to revive himself. He then goes on to declare war against the Phantom Troupe, killing both Cortopi and Shelnark. The troupe take up the challenge and start hunting Hisoka. They follow his trail to the voyage to the Dark Continent and are actively trying to find him on board, though the two have not run into each other just yet. And that is it. There's a lot of intrigue and subtle plots going on, Pariston and Ging's rising conflict, the gang war on the boat, the many layers of things going on in the Succession War. As for a crash course, that should hopefully catch you up. Fingers crossed that Togashi can come back to the series, but until then, this is where we're at. Thanks for watching, this has been CG, and I'll see you Gs in the next one.